Hi guys, Michael DDA here. Thank you for joining me. Today we are going through Numbers 9. This is the Passover, the second Passover. Remember, we kept our first Passover. We didn't get to leave Egypt until we kept the Passover. So let my son, my firstborn, go that he may serve me. And we didn't get to go until we became his firstborn, Ezra men. Then he brought us out. Then he brought us to Mount Sinai and gave Israel's seed, not the ger, not the ladies, not the children, Israel's seed, his instructions on the mountain. He met with us. He's been giving us his instructions ever since. And now we have just set up the tabernacle in the first month of the second year that we came out of Egypt. You know, we have to go to Yasher to kind of figure the sequence of events. Briefly, starting from Yasher here, 83. Here we are in the 23rd day of the 12th month. We're still in Sinai. We began to consecrate Aaron and his sons. And for 7 days, they were consecrated. On the 8th day, it says, which is the first day of the month, in the second year, this is where we're at right now. We're in the first month of the second year today, as we begin talking about the Passover. This is going to be the second time that we've kept Passover. It's 1 month or 1 year later from the first Passover. So, what did we do that day? Here we are. We set up the sanctuary. Nadab and Abihu died with strange fire. Then for 12 days, we consecrated the altar from the first day to the 12th day. On the 13th day, what does Yehovah say? Look what he says. And after this, on the 13th day of the month, that Moses commanded Israel's seed to observe the Passover. And Israel's seed kept the Passover in its season in the 14th day of the month. This is the 14th day of the second year. Then this goes into the second month. That's when Israel's seed was numbered. We numbered Israel's seed, 603,550. Then the Levites, which we talked about last week, were set apart to Yehovah. And last week in the Torah, we gave them their instructions and sanctified them. Now, here we are in chapter 9. That was chapter 8. Chapter 9 of Numbers. Yehovah says, now Yehovah spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the first month of the second year that we came out of the land of Egypt. Levites haven't been sanctified yet, so the Levites are not involved in the Passover, other than keeping it for themselves because they're Ezra men. So he says, let Israel's seed, well, here, I'm going to do number 9 first, because 9:1, because I've got some notes here that I want to address. This is Passover. This is the second Passover, second Passover. Israel follows the cloud. This is my description for this particular section. So first we're going to talk about Passover. Then we're going to talk about second Passover. Then we're going to talk about Israel following the clouds. Those are the topics of this chapter. I put this is back to the first month. Second year after the altar is dedicated. This is right after the altar is dedicated. Altar dedicated, same day. Remember, we did a service to have, well, here, I think I've even got it in here. I know I've got it in here someplace. We're going to do the service that's going to make Yehovah appear for us over the tabernacle, fire by day, on fire by night, cloud by day. So 9:1, the Passover is again commanded. 9:6 is where we're going to talk about the second Passover. Let's talk about the first Passover, because we've got to remember some things. It says, and when a stranger, a ger, dwells with you, the Ezra. Remember, the Ezra are what we're going to become. We're going to see that in just a second. Whenever it says you, he's not talking about you. He's talking about Israel's seed, because those are who instructions is given to. Let Israel's seed keep the Passover, is what it says in verse 2. And when a stranger, a ger, dwells with you, the Ezra, and wants to keep the Passover to Yehovah. I'm reading right here, you guys. Let all his males be circumcised. We're talking about the ger now. Let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it. And he shall become as a native of the land. And Ezra haaretz is who we're talking about. The ger is going to become the Ezra at the Passover. For no uncircumcised person shall eat it. That means ladies are not going to eat it, doesn't it? One law shall be for the native born, the Ezra. That's what it says. They translate it as the native born, the Ezra. It says one law shall be for the Ezra, and for the ger, translated as stranger, who dwells among you. That's how they finished that particular portion. I said, perhaps the lamb, I'm continuing down, perhaps the lamb that was killed when the prodigal son returned is the Passover lamb. I'm just speculating into the New Testament, even though I think the New Testament is not sacred, not scripture. It's writings given to us, I think, by the Catholic Church, and it's got a certain amount of things in it to help us and trick us. You know, that's how Satan works. He adds lies. He says, everything I say is a lie. And even that's a lie. Because some of it is truth to deceive you. Is the Passover lamb that we will bring him back into, let me try reading this again. Perhaps the lamb that was killed when the prodigal son returned is the Passover lamb that will bring him back into a correct relationship with his heavenly Father. Either Yehovah and his ways do not change in your life, or they do. In my life, they don't. Passover is not something that we have to do. It's something that we want to do. So we remain in the land, remain part of the land, and so we do not have to bear our own sins. Did you hear that? Not having to bear our own sins. We're going to talk about that today. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to read this also. On the 14th day of the second month, at twilight, they may keep it, the Passover. You know, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. I think I want to wait. Yeah, let's continue. We're going to get to this. We're going to get to this. This is really important that we understand this. He says, let Israel's seed, remember, Israel's seed are the Ezra men. I've shown you that many times in Torah, where we can see Israel's seed and the Ezra men right next to each other. Here, I've got a note. Let's see, EZ. One of these. Ezra born in the land. Let's check this one. Oh, here, this one. Yeah. This is Exodus 12. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, let me just read a few of these. This is Leviticus 16. This shall be a statute forever to you. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls, and you shall do no work at all. The Ezra or the Ger who dwells with you. Do you see how they're switching things around? Yehovah does this regularly, where he talks about Bnei Israel and the Ger. Now, all of a sudden, it says the Ezra and the Ger. Do you see how the Ezra are Bnei Israel, which gets translated as the children of Israel? What a ridiculous thing to do. Sons of Israel is better, but Israel's seed is the best of all because we're talking about spiritually born men from generation to generation to generation. Here's another one. This is in Leviticus 17. And this spells it out. Again, if you follow all of Leviticus, if you look through all of Leviticus 17, this is on meat that we eat and kill. We're going to see that the the evolution, if you will, from Israel's seed to understanding that they're the native of the land. Here it says it. And every person that eats that which dies of itself, or that which is torn by beasts, as a native of the country is the Ezra, Israel's seed, or the Ger. He shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until evening. So there's another one. Now here's one in Leviticus 23. This is really a standout verse for understanding who Israel's seed is, the Ezra men. Look what it says. You shall be seated in protective coverings. 7 days, all the Ezra, all that are Israelites, they shall be seated in protective coverings, that your generation may know that I made Israel's seed, Ezra men, dwell in booths. When I brought them out of the land of Egypt, I am Yehovah, your Elohim. So Yehovah, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, is showing you who Israel's seed is. And it is Passover that the Ger becomes the Ezra. Israel. That's who they are. What did Yehovah tell Moses to say to Pharaoh? Let my son, my firstborn, go. No, my firstborn, Israel, go that he may serve me. The firstborn are the Ezra men who are Israel. They are Bnei Israel, Israel's seed. Here's yet another one. And I've collected a lot of these. But let's talk about this one. Here's 15. You shall have one law for him who does anything in ignorance, for him who is the Ezra among Israel's seed. There we are, using the same thing, just like we use the tent of Ohel and the Mishkan. The tent of Ohel has become, after we put up the Mishkan, the new tent of Ohel. The Mishkan and the tent of Ohel are used synonymously. We're going to see that later today. Just like Israel's seed and the Ezra are used synonymously. Where was it? Let's start again. You shall have one law for him who does anything in ignorance, for him who is the Ezra, ha-Ezra, among Israel's seed. And for the stranger who dwells with them. There it is. You and the stranger who dwells with you. If you haven't gone through Passover, you're not the you. You got to become the you. But the person who acts in open betrayal, whether a native born or Ezra, that one brings Yehovah reproach. He shall be cut off from among his people. We're going to see a place where that person is cut off among Yahweh's people again today. All who are native born, all the Ezra, shall do these things in this manner, in presenting an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to Yehovah. Here's another place where it's used. I have seen the wicked in great power, spreading himself as the Ezra men, as the Ezra. But they're not the Ezra. They're pretending to be the righteous, but they're not the righteous. Only the Ezra men are Yehovah's righteous men, men who are born a second time, men who have had their sins forgiven them. Let's continue. 9:3. He says, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight, you shall keep it at the moed, at the appointed time, according to all the rites, all its rites and ceremonies, you shall keep it. Here I've got a couple verses that kind of go along the same idea. Let me go back to my study here. Appointed time. This is the moed. At its appointed time is when we're going to keep the Passover. So Moses told Israel's seed, the Ezra men, that they should keep the Passover. And they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month at twilight in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all that Yehovah commanded Moses. So Israel's seed did. Now, here's a switch over in a kind of our ideas. Right now, we were keeping the Passover. They kept the Passover. Now it says, now there were certain men who were defiled by a human corpse. They were unclean. Men that they're talking about is the word. This is the word they use, enosh. It's the plural of ish. Oh, plural of enosh, man. This is not about ladies, just by the very fact that we're talking about certain men who are unable to keep it. We already talked about it. You can't eat it if you're not circumcised. Ladies don't have that possibility, do they? This is not about ladies, defiled or not. And I have an article in there. What is man? You can look it up. There were certain men who were defiled by human corpse, so they could not keep the Passover on that day. And they came before Moses and Aaron, and those men said to him, we became defiled by a human corpse. Why are we kept from presenting and offering a korban? Here it is. There are certain men. Why are we prevented from bringing korab? They say presenting an offering. The offering, the word that they use for offering. Look these up. It's important that we do this. This is a korban. This is something that's going to help us to draw close to Yehovah at its appointed time, at its moed, among Israel's seed. And Moses said to them, stand still that I may hear what Yehovah will command concerning you. So he's going to go before the Father. He's probably going into the tabernacle right before the curtain that separates the holy from the most holy. He's going to talk with Yehovah. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Israel's seed, saying, if anyone among you, you know what? This word here, any one of you, if any one of you, you know what it says? It says ish ish. That's how they translate ish ish. Speak to Israel's seed. If man, or your prosperity. Now, when they use ish, know that there's a difference between an ish and an adam. For the most part, Ezra men are called ish. The rest of the world are called adam. I think that is significant that we understand that verbiage so that we can discern a spiritually born man from a man who has not been born a second time, regardless of whether or not they believe in Jesus. You guys, you got to get over this false image. It's given to us by the Catholic Church to turn us away from Yehovah's ways. So again, speak to Israel's seed, saying, if any of you, if man of your prosperity is unclean because of a corpse, or is far away on a journey, he may still keep Yehovah's Passover. Hear that? Yehovah has given us a second chance. What other feast of Yehovah does he give us a second chance to keep? Except for the Passover. This is significant, you guys. This is how much Yehovah loves us. He gives us 2 times the chance to become his son. And remember, if you're married to an Ezra man, you are an Ezra daughter, if you will. As his son, he's Yehovah's son. You can become Yehovah's daughter by virtue of your relationship, bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, with your man. On the 14th day of the second month, we're in verse 11. At twilight, you may keep it. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs, just like we did the first time in Exodus 12. They shall leave none of it until morning, nor break one of its bones. According to all the ordinances of the Passover, they shall keep it. The ordinances of the Passover are all codified in Exodus 12. Now, look what it says. But the man who is clean and not on a journey and ceases to keep the Passover, that same soul, they say person, that same soul shall be cut off from his people. Why? Because he did not bring the korban, a korban. Here it is right here. He did not bring an offering, a korban of Yehovah. I'm going to read it on the right here. Korban of Yehovah. He did not bring it. He did not bring at its appointed time, at the Moed. He says, his sin shall that man bear. Now here, this is how they wrote it in this. It says, because he did not bring the offering, the korban of Yehovah at the appointed time, that man shall bear his sin. That man shall bear his sin. His sin, kata, there it is right there, kata, his sin, kata, shall that man bear. Shall that man, the ish bear. He was Yehovah's son. But he didn't bring the Passover at that point in time. And now he's going to bear his own sin. Well, this has implications. If a man does not bring his offering at the appointed time and ends up bearing his own sin, what does it mean about the man who brings his korban at the moed? See, you got to sometimes look at what it doesn't say also. The opposite of what it does say. Let me continue. I have my notes on the right-hand side here. This is from Psalms 50. Yehovah is coming in the clouds. You know, even what it says before this. Let me go there. Let me go to Psalms 50 here. Look what it says. Our Elohim shall come. He shall not keep silent. Our Elohim shall come. Does it say our Jesus shall come? No, they switched it. They made Yehovah or Yeshua, Jesus, coming in the clouds. But this says our Elohim shall come, and he shall not keep silent. A fire shall devour before him, and he shall be very tempestuous, and it shall be very tempestuous around him. He comes in a cloud. He comes in fire, like he did on the mountain. He shall call to the heavens above and to the earth, that he may judge his people. Look what it says. Gather together, my saints. The word here is kasid. Here it is on the right-hand side, kasid. It means gather together, my kind, my saints, my kind. Those who cut, karat, covenant, barat, with me by slaughter. He's talking about the Passover, you guys. This is Yehovah coming, gathering his saints. Remember, Isaiah 26, Isaiah says, the dead shall rise. Together with my dead body, we shall arise and sing. This is the same time. Gather together, my saints. These are the dead being raised. Let's go back. I want to continue where I was reading here. Here it says in Psalms 50, verse 6, let the heavens declare his righteousness, for Elohim himself is governor. He is the governor. This is what we were just reading. Karat is about being cut off. Where they use the word cut off. Here it is right here. Karat. Karat. There it is. That same soul shall be cut off from his people. What does it mean to be cut off? Literally cut off. Down or asunder. By implication, to destroy, consume. It's being kicked out. Passover is not something that we have to do. It's something that we want to do if we want to remain as Yehovah's, as I put the land seed, the Ezra Haaretz, the land seed. That's literally what Ezra Haaretz means, the land seed. And not have to bear our own sin. Do you want to bear your sin? Sometimes what Torah does not say is important to us. The man who does bring his korban at the appointed time will stay numbered among Yehovah's people and not, hear that, and not bear his own sin. Sin, our sin, each year, because we keep the Passover every year, is forgiven. This is why it's so important that we keep the Passover. This is why Yehovah gives us 2 feasts 2 times, first month, second month, that we can keep the Passover and have our sins forgiven and become his people. This is why the Passover is the first feast of Yehovah. Because if you don't keep the Passover, the rest of the feasts mean nothing. Do we keep the Sukkot? You know, so many people want to keep Sukkot. Oh, we're going to go camp. We're going to teach Jehovah's. They're wearing their tzitzit. They aren't even Ezra, and they're wearing tzitzit. The man who does not bring his offering, his korban at the appointed time, will stay numbered among Israel. See, who does bring it? Forgiveness of sin has nothing to do with the golden calf of the modern age. That's what I call Jesus, the golden calf of the modern age. We're worshiping the golden calf instead of Yehovah, the Elohim on the mountain. Let's do what he says and forget all those doctrines and traditions of men that were given to us by the Catholic Church in the 4th century when they added the New Testament to the Hebrew Scriptures. The New Testament wasn't added by the Hebrews. It was added by the Catholic Church, Constantine. And wait until you find out, oh, it's coming. It's already coming. It's already out. 9 circle sacrifices that are going on underneath the Catholic Church have been going on for centuries. Severe wickedness. The Catholic Church is certainly the synagogue of Satan. Guys, you've got to open your eyes. It was these guys who gave you the New Testament. Let me read this 13 again. But the man who is clean and not on a journey. No, here, I guess I got to refresh it. The man who is clean and not on a journey and ceases to keep the Passover, that same person, that same man shall be cut off from among his people because he did not bring the offering of Yehovah at the appointed time. That man shall bear his own sin. Now look what it says. And if a stranger dwells among you and would keep the Passover, he must do so, how? According to the rite of the Passover, according to its ceremony. Exactly the same wording that he said for the Ezra man. According to the ordinances of the Passover, he shall keep it. You shall have one ordinance, it says, for a ger. It doesn't say the ger, it says for the ger. And here, I'm going to read it on the right. And if a stranger dwells among you, Israel's seed is the you. You know, just because it says you doesn't mean it means you. He's talking to Israel's seed. That's what the whole thing is about. Israel's seed keeping the Passover. And would keep the Passover to Yehovah. Keep Yehovah's Passover. He must do according to the rite of the Passover and according to its ceremony. You shall have one ordinance, both for the stranger. This says, and for the stranger, that is the ger, and the lands, here it is, the Ezra, here it says, and, I know this, and for the lands, this is the Ezra, the Haaretz. Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Could you explain the rite of Passover and according to its ceremony, or the laws and the right rulings, so I get a better understanding, please?
According to the rites of the ceremony, those are all the instructions that are codified in Exodus 12. Who can eat it? Who can't eat it? Doing it with unleavened bread. Everything that it says in Exodus 12 is the rites and according to its ceremony, the rites and the ordinances of the Passover. Does that help you?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did mention that earlier, but that's good. When we have questions, we need to ask and get them understood. If you had questions, likely other people are having questions at the same time. So this is where the stranger can keep the Passover. And if a stranger dwells with you and would keep the Passover, he must do according to the rites of the Passover and according to its ceremony. And you shall have one ordinance for the stranger, for a stranger, and for the land's Ezra, the stranger and the Bnei Israel. That's what we're talking about. Let me continue reading down this thread. How a stranger becomes a native born Ezra. I mean, this is really where we're at. I'm talking to any man who is listening, can leave the kingdom of his birth. Here it says, a ger has already left the kingdom of his birth and is beginning to learn and do Yehovah's Torah. He's joined himself to Israel. I think that when a ger joins himself to Israel, he almost needs a sponsor. Dare I say a sponsor? An Ezra man that he can live with and spend time with and learn Yehovah's statutes and judgments and ordinances. That's why he dwells with you. When you keep, he says, Exodus 20, talking about the Sabbath. You shall do no work. Your sons, your daughters, your maidservant, your male servant, your oxen, and the ger who dwells with you. There's a ger that's dwelling with us many times. We're teaching him. He's going to be the new Ezra at Passover. And it appears to me that even though it says, and if a stranger dwells among you and would keep the Passover to Yehovah, I think he is required to keep the Passover to Yehovah. You cannot stay a permanent ger. You're either going to be, she says, there's one ordinance for both the stranger and the ger. What do you say? If you don't keep the Passover, you get kicked out of Israel and you bear your own sin. Do you see how that works? So it's not whether he wants to keep it. He has to keep the Passover and become the Ezra man. What are the advantages of becoming the Ezra man? He's going to get his own land. He's going to become Israel's son, Yehovah's son, Yehovah's firstborn. No, this is not a I have to do something. This is a get to do something, you guys. When I kept the Passover for the first time, I called myself a Christian for many, many, many years. I believe that Jesus was the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Boy, I had learned the lines. It's a false narrative given to us by the Catholic Church to keep us from the Passover. Have you ever seen Constantine's Creed? I know this is another hiatus, but I just have to go through this with you. Look what it says here. Let's go to C. Constantine's Creed. Here it is right here. Listen to this. This is what they wanted the whole world to do to turn to Christianity. He says, I renounce all customs, rites, legalisms, unleavened breads, and sacrifices of lambs of the Hebrews, and all the feasts of the Hebrews, sacrifices, prayers, aspirations. This is all being renounced. Purification, sanctification, propitiations, and the fasts, and the new moons, and the Sabbaths. To see how the Catholic Church was turning men away from Yehovah to the golden calf. Interesting that the golden calf was born on the same day that Nimrod was born on. That all the false gods were born on, that they all had a miraculous birth, a virgin birth. They all were raised from the dead. They were all born at Christmas. What do they call Christmas? I'm forgetting right now, but it was another day where we were sharing our wives and sharing our daughters with other men. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. Same law, one ordinance, both for the stranger, for Agar, and the land's Ezra. This is another case where, we're always used to seeing Israel's seed and the Ger who dwells with them. Well, here it's saying the Ezra, or the Ger, and the Ezra. The Ezra are Israel's seed. Second-born men from generation to generation. Now, on the day the tabernacle was raised, this is the tabernacle, the Mishkan was raised. I usually try to make that in green so we know that's done. It's a little good it says. Now on that day the Mishkan was raised up, and a cloud covered the Mishkan. Look what it says, the tent of meetings, the Ohel Moed. The Ohel Moed is the tabernacle, just like Bnei Israel is the Ezra. They have two different names. You know what? You got to seek out, line upon line, precept upon precept, if you want to learn Yehovah's word. You have no choice. I'm trying to break it down for you so that you can see what took me years to discover. I told you before, I went into Passover kicking and screaming. But it wasn't until I actually kept a real Passover that Yehovah showed me the Benakar, the Toshab, the Ger, and the Ezra. 4 different kinds of men on the earth. And it was a progress. Remember, Benakar is a foreign son. Ben-Nakar, foreign son, doesn't know anything about Israel. But then he meets somebody like I did, who was wearing tzitzit. I don't think he was an Ezra man, but he was kind of on the journey. He was wearing tzitzit. And I realized, there's more for me to learn. I became a Toshab, I think, that day, because I met somebody who was Israel. Israel has men who dwell with them. They've got workers who dwell with them. They're not technically Toshab. They're called something different. But a Toshab is somebody who maybe does business with Israel. Like I was doing business with this man. He was one of I was one of his vendors. I was doing advertising for this man. And I became a Toshab at that point. So they have some kind of relationship with Israel's seed. Now again, he wasn't Israel's seed. I don't believe that for a second. But he was on the journey. Remember, this is what Yehovah gave me when I first kept a Passover. Then the lights came on. And I saw in Leviticus 12 those men and how a man becomes the Ezra, Yehovah's firstborn son. So we have the Ger. The Ger is the man who leaves the kingdom of his birth. I dropped off. I stopped using my driver's license, stopped using my social security number, and became Yehovah's Ger. Then at Passover, finally, remember I came kicking and screaming. I became Yehovah's Ezra man for the first time in my life. I've never not kept the Passover since then. It's been 17 years, 18 years. I've never had to keep a second Passover because I've always done it in the first year, in the first month. That's how important it is. I'm not going to have my sins remain on me. You know, we, Israel's seed, were taught that if we sin, we can bring a sin offering. But the sin offering is the Passover lamb. You don't keep that. All the other ones are irrelevant, aren't they? Let me continue. A ger has already left the kingdom of his birth. Now, we are blessed. You are blessed. If you're listening to me right now and you are a Toshab, if you listen to me, you're probably a Toshab. You're talking to a man who wears a tzitzit. I always have my tzitzit on. Just one, not a bunch. We'll talk about that later on. Not about having it on the four corners of your garment. It's on the outside of your garments. That's where mine's at. We'll talk about that when we get there. As I was saying, you're blessed because the kingdoms of the earth are being dissolved as we speak. You soon are going to be a sovereign man and a sovereign woman. But we're talking about sovereign men today. You're not going to be obligated to follow all the legalese, all the legal things that have been given unto us by the powers that be. So it's going to be much easier to leave that jurisdictional authority and put yourself under a new jurisdictional authority, the kingdom of Elohim. Declaration of Independence says governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Who do you give your consent to? I give my consent to my Father in heaven. I'm going to follow him. And because you're not going to be under all these extra laws, you can make that transition much easier than I was able to do. These days, because of the slavery that we've been in, we can't even work hardly without a driver's license, without a social security number, and all the paraphernalia that goes along with being a slave of this land. But all that's going to be dropped off. So you're going to be able to join yourself to Yehovah's kingdom much more easily. That said, let me say what I said again. And the ger has already left the kingdom of his birth and is beginning to learn and do Yehovah's Torah. Though his instructions sometimes apply differently for the ger who dwell with the Ezra than they do for the Ezra. You know, I wasn't able to find an example of that this morning, but I've seen many examples of that in the past. We're following the same law, but it applies differently sometimes. Now, here's what it says. Here's Leviticus 24. It says, you shall have the same law for a stranger, same Torah for a stranger, and one from your own country. Stranger, ger, one from your own country, Ezra. For I am Yehovah your Elohim. 12:24. This is what we already read in Exodus when the Passover, when the ger becomes a native of the land. I'll read it again. And when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover to Yehovah, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall become as a native of the land. And Ezra ha'aretz. What did Abraham or Yehovah always say to Abraham? It's always about the land and the seed, the land and the seed, the land and the seed. This is the Ezra ha'aretz, the Ezra of the land. For no uncircumcised person shall keep it. Here's Numbers 9:14. That's the one we just did. Oh, here. You know what? I'm just going to, you can take a picture of this if you want to go through this. This is the foreigner, the Ben Nakar that I was talking about. That's how you spell Nakar. And it's always referred to as the Ben Nakar, the son of the foreigner, the Ben Nakar. No foreigner, they just translate it as no foreigner shall eat it. Then we have the Ezra, or the Toshav. Now, the Toshav I called kind of a temporary visitor. He knows us, but he's not us. Then we have the Ger, that's who we're talking about right now, who's keeping the Passover, circumcising himself and all men of his household, and becoming the Ezra. This is the transition from one to the other. There's the Ezra. And this is happening in Exodus 19 through 48, 49. Maybe Exodus 15, Exodus 12, 43 through 48. We'll talk about that progression. This is the progression that I discovered after I kept a real Passover. Now, again, just as the Ezra is the same as the native born, the B'nai Israel, there's lots of names for Yehovah's firstborn son. So the tabernacle, the Mishkan, and the tent of Ohel, the tent of meetings, they called it, this is called the tent of the testimony in this case, not the tent of meetings. But oftentimes we're talking about the same thing. This is the same thing, the tent of meetings, the tent of the testimony is the Mishkan. What do we have here? Tent of the tabernacle, tent of the testimony. Here's the Ohel, and testimony in this case is this word right here is adut. I know it looks like aduth, but it's adut. This is the first month, first day, second year we came out of Egypt. No, first month. What do I have there? This is the first month, first day? No. Well, I guess it's just because we're on the 14th day right now. The first day, the day that we're going to keep the Passover. Then we have the Feast of Unleavened Bread that goes from the 15th to the 21st. Interestingly enough, we're going to see next week that we're going to leave Sinai. The tent's going to move. We're going to leave Sinai in the middle of the Passover. Well, not the middle, towards the end of the Passover on the 20th day. It goes through the Feast of Unleavened Bread, goes through the 21st. We're leaving on the 20th. I'm surprised that Yehovah did that. We'll talk about that more next week. Here's where we first set up the Passover, or set up the, that's why I have, here. This is the first month, first day we came out of Egypt. We set up the tabernacle. Then on that same day, we did a service to Yehovah, a service in which Yehovah appears. That is Leviticus 9. See, we're jumping everywhere. We're jumping back and forth in time. Last week, we were in the second month of the second year that we came out of Egypt. Now we're back in the first month of the second year that we came out of Egypt. Here's where we actually set up the tabernacle in Exodus. Then the cloud, this is the same thing when the service of Yehovah appears. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, the tent of meetings, and the glory of Yehovah filled the Mishkan. So here's the tent of meetings and the Mishkan. And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meetings, the Mishkan, because a cloud rested upon it. And the glory of Yehovah filled the Mishkan. Whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle, the Mishkan, Israel's seed would go onward in their journey. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not journey till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Yehovah was above the Mishkan by day, and a fire was over it by night, in the sight of all Israel's house, throughout all their journeys. So that is a really good transition to what we're going to talk about right now. Again, let me read it one more time. Now, on the day that the tabernacle was raised up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the Mishkan. There we have, there's Mishkan, you can use both times. The tent of the testimony. From evening until morning, it was above the tabernacle like the appearance of fire. So here we had the cloud covering the tabernacle, but now they're saying from morning till evening, it was fire that was covering it. So same thing that we were just talking about here in Exodus 40. So it was. The cloud covered it by day and the appearance of fire by night. This is going to seem rather redundant because we're going to say this over and over again. Whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle, this happens to be from above the tent. This is the word that they're using, ohel, from above the tent. They translate it as tabernacle. After that, Israel's seed would journey. And in the place where the cloud settled, there Israel's seed, it says, would pitch their tents. Really, the word is kana, which means they rested. It can be translated as pitched their tents. They stopped. They rested. It seems to mean rested. Inclined. They said specifically to pitch their tents. Encamped. So all these things can be used for this word. At the command of Yehovah, Israel's seed would journey, and at the command of Yehovah, they would camp. As long as the cloud stayed above the tabernacle, they remained encamped, inclined. Same words again, inclined, tabernacle. When the cloud continued long, many days above the tabernacle, Israel's seed kept charge of Yehovah and did not journey. So this is when the cloud remained, continued long above the tabernacle. So it was when the cloud was above the tabernacle a few days. According to the command of Yehovah, they would remain encamped. And according to the command of Yehovah, they would journey. So it was when the cloud remained. I told you this was pretty redundant. When the cloud remained only from evening until morning. So it was when the cloud remained only from evening till morning, then the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they would journey, whether by day or night, whenever the cloud was taken up, they would journey. Just a couple more verses. Whether it was 2 days, a month, or a year, the cloud remained above the tabernacle. Israel's seed would remain encamped. Kana is the word. Remain encamped and not journey. But when it was taken up, they would journey. At the command of Yehovah, they remained encamped. And at the command of Yehovah, they journeyed. They kept the charge of Yehovah at the command of Yehovah by the hand of Moses. Next week, we are going to see for the first time in 11 months that the cloud is going to move. Remember, the cloud, they followed the cloud out of Egypt. It protected them for a short time while they got across the Red Sea. All right. Well, we're going to stop here, and we'll pick this up next time. I know I went on a lot of hiatuses today. You know what? I think they're beneficial. I'm trying to help men especially men, understand Yehovah's ways. You know, Yehovah has different duties and responsibilities for a man than he does for a woman. As a woman, you've got to learn your duties and responsibilities. The chief responsibility Yehovah gave to Hava, Eve, after she sinned and deceived her man. He talked about pain in childbirth, and he said, your desire shall be for your man, and he shall rule over you. Most women have been trained to be men. They've been trained to leave their covering. They're men. A woman goes from one covering, generally her father, to another covering, her man. She's never running around uncovered. Oh, we'll see what happens when we find uncovered women, when we make women uncovered by fighting with another country, and we take a virgin daughter who's uncovered to ourselves. Oh, there's so many interesting things. You've got to see how all the pieces fit together. This is what I'm trying to do, is fit all the pieces together for you so that you can see the big picture. Dare I say the 40,000-foot view of what's going on in Yehovah's kingdom. Well, so much of this is relating to what's going on in the world today, with the cabal being taken down. Men are being set free to follow their heart. And I'm hoping that many men will choose to become ger, and then in the very near future become Ezra men, Yehovah's firstborn, Israel. Let's stop here, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me, and Yehovah bless you. Bye-bye.